Okay, so India's union budget for 2026 has dropped, and believe me, it is a big one. Today, we're going to cut through all the jargon and tell you exactly what this means for your money. So, let's get right into it.
Now you might be thinking, another budget, what's new? Well, this one's different. It's not just another annual update. It's really the opening act for a huge shakeup of India's entire tax system. The brand new Income Tax Act of 2025 is just around the corner, and this budget gives us a real sneak peek of what's to come. So let's break down what this all means for your finances right now and in the years ahead.
All right, before we dive into what the finance minister actually announced, let's talk about the mood on the street. You know, from salaried folks to retirees, pretty much everyone had a wish list for this budget. Let's take a look at what people were really asking for.
If you've got a salary job, you know the deal. The cost of living just keeps climbing, but our paychecks, well, they don't always keep up. So it's no surprise that the top of their list was all about getting more take-home pay. People were looking for a bigger standard deduction, a much higher income level before that top tax bracket kicks in, and more options to save for retirement.
And here's the real issue. While salaries have gone up over the years, the tax brackets, well, they just haven't kept pace. What that means is more and more of us are getting pushed into higher tax brackets, even if our actual buying power hasn't really changed. And that's a huge problem, especially when you're trying to put money aside for the future.
And hey, it wasn't just about the monthly paycheck. If you're trying to buy a home, or maybe you're a senior citizen on a fixed income, this budget was a really big deal for you too. Home buyers were hoping for a much bigger tax break on their loans, while seniors were really looking for some relief from rising healthcare costs and a bit of a boost on their savings.
So, the big question. Did the government deliver on all these hopes and dreams? Well, not exactly. But hold on, that doesn't mean there wasn't good news. Not at all. The budget was actually packed with some pretty specific relief measures that could make a real difference for some of us. Let's check them out.
Okay, first up, and this is a biggie for anyone who travels, sends their kids to study overseas, or has to pay for medical treatment in another country. The government just made sending money abroad a whole lot easier and, more importantly, cheaper.
And this right here, it's a fantastic example of the government's whole strategy this time around. Instead of huge, sweeping tax cuts, they're focusing on targeted relief. That tax collected at source, you know, the TCS, it's been slashed to just 2%. I mean, from as high as 20% in some cases. That is a massive drop, and it's going to make a huge difference to your cash flow if you're making those kinds of payments.
Let's be real for a second. Dealing with the tax department can be, well, a nightmare. But the good news is it looks like the government is finally trying to fix that. This budget has a bunch of changes designed to make the tax system feel less like a battle and more like, well, a process you can actually navigate.
So here's the bottom line. If you ever get a tax notice that you don't agree with, you're in a much better spot now. You'll have to pay less money up front to even start an appeal, you won't get hit with interest on penalties while you're waiting, and you'll have more flexibility to fix mistakes. It's all about making the process less stressful and, frankly, more fair.
Oh, but wait, there's more. The budget also threw in a few other nice touches, like giving us more time to revise our tax returns and a new tax exemption for interest you might get on accident claims. And you might think these are just minor tweaks, but they're all pieces of a much bigger puzzle, an effort to make the tax system simpler and clearer for everyone.
So after all that, what was the one big thing missing from this budget? You guessed it, big, flashy tax cuts. But there's a really good reason for that. The government is sending a very, very clear signal. The future of India's tax system is the new tax regime.
And you know what? It's not just the government pushing for this change. Taxpayers are already voting with their feet. The numbers speak for themselves. A massive 72% of people have already made the jump to the new tax regime. That's a huge shift, and it's only going to grow.
So, what's the big deal with this new tax regime anyway? Well, for starters, it has more tax slabs and generally lower rates, which for many people could mean paying less tax overall. But here's the trade-off. You have to say goodbye to most of your deductions. For a lot of folks, though, that's a deal they're more than willing to take for a simpler, cleaner tax system.
Look, this budget is really just the warm-up act. The real main event is the upcoming Income Tax Act of 2025. This thing is a complete overhaul of the current system, and it's all about making your life easier. The whole point is to create a tax system that's so straightforward, a regular person, like you or me, can actually do their taxes without pulling their hair out.
Okay, so we've gone through a lot. Let's bring it all home. After all that, what does this budget actually mean for you? Let's cut through the noise and get right to the bottom line.
The big story here isn't about how much money you're going to save in tax cuts, it's really about how much time and stress you're going to save. The government is finally, genuinely trying to simplify the tax system, and no matter how you slice it, that is good news for all of us.
So really, this budget is way more than just a list of new rules. Think of it as a roadmap to the future of taxes in India, and that future looks a whole lot simpler. Which leaves us with one final big question. Are we seeing the beginning of the end for the old way of doing taxes? The whole maze of deductions and exemptions? That's something to think about.